If you enjoy what we're doing and want to become one of our tribe, then go ahead and click subscribe. And if you choose to be PC with D, remember, it's always free. And if you give that little bell icon a ring, you'll be notified of our next video, and you won't miss a thing. And if you choose to give this video a like, won't you please share it as well, so we can give Christianity a bigger mic.
And as I always say, I love each and every one of you, and the things I've prepared here tonight are always given right here, first and foremost. Tonight we're going to continue and finish our series on the story of Ruth. Now, in the first lesson, we went over chapters 1 and 2. In chapter 1, we saw how Naomi, which also means pleasant one, was anything but, right? She had lost everything. Had lost her husband Elimelech, her sons Hilion and Mahlon. And we saw how this was a thing that really took to her, wasn't it? Something that she really was bitter over. Something that really was a thing that weighed upon her life. We saw in this how as we age, we all lose things, don't we? It's something that's a part of life. We all get older and we all lose certain things. And we also seen how when we lose those things, we tend to overlook what remains, as she did by pushing away Ruth, the greatest friend she could have hoped for. And by the end of chapter 1, we saw how this bitterness had completely taken over Naomi. And she started to blame God, didn't she? She said, when I left Bethlehem, my hands were full, and when I returned empty. The Lord has afflicted me. Yes, we saw the danger of a bitter heart and how it can drive a wedge between us and God. But by chapter 2, we began to see something change. Yes, as much as tragedy empties our life, as much as it overtakes our life and makes us in the lowest points we could ever have, when tragedy empties our life, we saw in chapter 2 how God begins to refill it, as he did with Naomi. Yes, through the steadfastness of Ruth, through her ethic, through her love for Naomi, for the family, willing to represent her in the fields, she began to win her over, didn't she? Little bit by little bit. But something else happened that she wasn't planning on. She also was beginning to win over the hearts and minds of the Israelites that were there in Bethlehem, and was beginning to win over the heart of Boaz as she ended up gleaning from a field that just happened to be a near kinsman of Naomi, which she needed to redeem her life. Was that coincidence or providence? It was providence, wasn't it? And so when we leave chapter 2, we see that Naomi is now beginning to have her heart filled once again. She's beginning to have her heart begin to see that God is blessing her life and that she has someone who lives up to her namesake, Ruth, Reut, companion or friend. And she starts to see how much she loves and cares for her. And that's where we end chapter 2. And that's where we ended our first lesson. So tonight we're going to continue on and continue to see how God and the power of love, the power from Him above. We're going to see how we lose, how we glean, and everything in between. This is the story of Ruth, part 2. We go in now, if you want to follow along, as usual, we're going to go on with Ruth, and we're going to go with chapters 3 and 4, where our study is going to be tonight. And in chapter 3, I have written here, we see the power of God. We're going to see the power of God is going to be shown through self-sacrifice. Now, when we pick up in chapter 3, we see how Naomi now loves Ruth, and she's very concerned for her because Ruth has been a widow. And she feels like she needs to be happy. And so we begin this chapter by Naomi saying, I want you to be at rest. And I want things to be well with you. Was not Boaz a near kinsman to us? Was not he good to you when you went out into the fields reaping with his maidens, and he allowed you to reap right with the reapers and have the best that he had? Was he not good to you? And will he not be on the threshing floor tonight, winnowing? Will he not be ready to have that grain processed and have a hard day's work? Therefore go and wash yourself, array yourself, anoint yourself. Go and meet him on the threshing floor. Find the spot where he's going to lay down and mark it. And wait, and don't let him be known. Don't let yourself be known to him until he's already eaten and drinking. For that, and afterwards, uncover his feet. And we find a lot of interesting things here. As I said, we begin this chapter with a quite different Naomi, don't we, than we began in chapter 1 and even into 2. Now we find a Naomi that actually cares about Ruth, actually is caring about her feelings, actually is caring about what becomes of her. That'd be a hard thing, wouldn't it, to let go of your son? You know, Naomi had lost her husband and her sons, but you see your daughter-in-law's a widow. And you don't want her to be unhappy, just like anybody in this life we care about and we love. When we get up in our age, up in our years a little bit, we don't want to leave this earth with things undone, with those that we love unhappy and empty. We want things to be well in hand, don't we? So when we leave this earth, we have peace. That's where Naomi is. She's wanting Ruth to have a life beyond her son. She's finally starting to accept, isn't she, that her son's gone and he's not coming back, but she has someone that remains that she absolutely loves and she wants to see be happy. And so she's telling her to go. Boaz is good to you. He has been good to you. We have an opportunity here to not only redeem my life, but your life. Go and do these things. And when you do, he'll tell you what to do. After you've uncovered his feet, after you've done these things I've told you to do, don't worry about it. He'll tell you what to do. And Ruth, without question, doesn't he, says, I will do all that you say. I'll do everything that you ask of me. Once again, we see the selflessness of Ruth. Without question, she's willing to go and do exactly what her mother-in-law asked, without question. Now, a little side note here, we see the word winnowing, and that means that he is processing the barley that they took in, which was a very interesting process when I researched this. What they would do is they would be on a toboggan, like a sled that doesn't have the runners on the bottom, it's flat. They would drill the holes in the bottom of this sled and put rocks upon it, inside of it. They would tie it off to a donkey, and the person would stand on it and have the donkey drag them back and forth across that threshing floor until it was crushed. And then when it was done, they would take what was called a winnow fork, which is a wooden pitchfork basically, and toss it into the air on a windy day and have the wind blow all the chaff, the impurities, the dust, the dirt off of that finished product. It would be laying here. Your finished product would be over against the wall. A very labor-inducing process, but very engineering when you stop and think about it. And I read that it is still done this way to this day in parts of the country. But that's what he's done. So he's had a very hard day at work, very labor-inducing. And after he's eaten and he's drunk and his heart was merry, he goes to lay down. And here comes Ruth, doesn't she, doing the part that she was told to do, uncovering his feet. Now, during the day, your coat that you had also became your blanket at night. And so by uncovering his feet, this is probably going to make him a little chilled and make him wake up. And she'll have an opportunity to talk to him and let herself be known. Now, this would not work with my wife, as she sleeps with her feet outside the covers every night. But evidently it worked with Boaz, and we're told around midnight he begins to stir, and he begins to get a little afraid, and he sees a woman at his feet. And he asks, who art thou? And she said, it is I, it's Ruth, your maiden, and you are near of kin to me. You're a near kinsman to me. And I require that you do the part of a kinsman. He can't believe what he's hearing. He says, blessed be the Lord, my daughter, for your kindness in this latter end is even greater than it was in the beginning. As great as it was as I saw you out in those fields working hard on behalf of Naomi, leaving your native land, leaving your gods, leaving your mother, your father to come to a place you don't know, to people you don't know. As great, as impressive as that is, as much as that won my heart over, this is even greater. Because now you're willing to lay aside your entire life, your entire being for Naomi, for your family. Doesn't get much greater than that, does it? Someone willing to completely, honestly, and genuinely be selfless in the service to someone else. That's what Ruth is doing for Naomi. And it's winning Boaz over. And he goes on to say, not only is this a blessing that she's done this, but it's even more of a blessing that she didn't go and take the easy route. She didn't go chasing after men of wealth. She didn't go chasing after younger men. So by this statement, we get the feeling that Boaz is quite a bit older than Ruth. He says, you didn't chase after younger men. You didn't chase after men of wealth. But you did this. And it is getting out there. In my city and the city of my people, it is becoming well known that you are a virtuous woman, which we read so much about in Proverbs 31, haven't we? She's living up to that moniker, isn't she? The Moabite, the foreigner who's come to town and impressed everybody. That would be a hard thing to do, wouldn't it? To impress people that are looking for reasons not to be impressed by you, reasons to take something against you. She's beginning to win them over, isn't she? And not by trying to make a spectacle of herself, but simply doing what's right and being a good person. When you constantly in this life, guys, do something over and over and over again that's good, that's genuinely good to help people, and people see that there's no benefit to yourself, it's going to start winning over people. And it was with Ruth. They're starting to see that she's a virtuous person. They're starting to see that she's a good person. And so he goes on and he tells her there that he will do the part of a kinsman. He will do what she requires. But there's someone that's nearer to the family than he. There's someone that has a first shot at this over him. And he can't do it until that person, he has it worked out. And so he tells her to lie down until the morning, and then he'll go and get these things sorted. And so she does, and in the morning she rises up before either could know each other or have any relations. So we see the character of Boaz. Remember, we're in the time of the Judges, Judges 17 and 6, where men did that which was right in their own eyes. So it's pretty much a time of lawlessness and godlessness, but we see the character of Boaz, don't we? He's a godly man, isn't he? He's not taking advantage of the situation. He's being a gentleman. And also another thing we see, he told her to stay the night, didn't he? Until the morning so she could go out, so no one saw her leaving there in the middle of the night. He's protecting her reputation, isn't he? Because it's taken a long time for Ruth to build up this reputation of a virtuous woman. And we all know in this life, don't we? You have to spend a long time, don't you, to build up a good reputation. But it takes nothing to tear it down. One rumor, one thing someone thinks they saw, and that's all it took, isn't it? So Boaz is protecting the reputation of Ruth by telling her to go ahead and go out in the morning. But he doesn't let her leave empty-handed, does he? He tells her to take the veil she was wearing, to bring it to him, and he lays upon her 6 measures of barley and tells her to take it back to her mother-in-law, not to go home empty-handed. And so she does, and she returns back to Naomi with the barley in hand, and Naomi asks, well, what happened? And she tells her what has transpired. And Naomi says, well, sit right down. Don't worry about it. We'll see how things fall. But rest assured, the man's not going to rest till things are settled this day. You know, when you see the end of that, you can almost see the glee coming back into Naomi, isn't it? This is like the two ladies that get together. So tell me what happened. That's what's going on, isn't it? You can start to see the excitement in Naomi start to come back. And when she tells him what she did and his reaction, oh, you got him, girl. You got him, girl. Just wait, that man ain't going to settle till this is settled. You can see it, ain't you? The life is starting to come back into Naomi. This once bitter person who's blaming God and says she has nothing in her life is now happy and starting to be excited. And so finally, the next day, Boaz goes to the gates, doesn't he? Where we know again in the time of the judges, this is where matters were settled. At the gates of the city, he waits. We don't know how long he waits. But he waits until that nearer kinsman comes along, and he finally sees him in chapter 4 here. And he sees him and he says, come over here, I need to talk to you about something. He gathers 10 men, 10 elders of the city to hear this matter. And he tells them that the woman Naomi has come back from the land of Moab, and that she has lost Elimelech, their brother, their relatives, inheritance. Their sons are gone. There's no one to redeem the land. And he told him that he needs to advertise it unto him or tell him about it because he's the one that's next in line. But if he can't redeem it, then I will. And of course, the man, seeing an opportunity to take the land, says, I'll redeem it. But Boaz, being smart, says, well, I want you to know that when you take the land of Elimelech and you take the things from Naomi, I want you to know you're not only taking land, but you have to take the Moabite woman for your wife to raise up the name of the dead, to raise up Mahlon's name so it doesn't get cut off from his inheritance. And you have to take her for wife. Now here's where the problem comes in. This man says, well, I already have a wife. I already have a firstborn son. If I take her for my wife, that's going to mar my inheritance. It's going to cause a conflict, 2 firstborns. I can't do it. I'm bowing out. I can't redeem it. You redeem it. And so before those witnesses, in the time that it was the custom, Boaz takes off his shoe and hands it to a witness. And this was a testimony, wasn't it? And he says, today I tell you, I take up all that was Elimelech's. I take on his name. I take on all of his debts, because that's what you did at that time. When you took on someone's land, when you redeemed it, you not only took up their land, you took up their name, you took up their debts, you took up all that was theirs. This was a very honorable thing to do. These are the things that would have got you great respect among people, and it did. Because as soon as he does this and he tells those folks he's going to take all these things, and he's going to take Ruth as his wife, they begin to give him biblical blessings, don't they? Well, may this wife that comes into your home be like Leah and Rachel that raised up the house of Israel. They go on to give him great biblical blessings, don't they? And so he goes and he does take Ruth as his wife, and they conceive a son, and they come back, and who's getting to nurse that son but Naomi? The one who lost everything is now beginning to get her life filled and filled and filled. And all those who she came back, remember, to Bethlehem and said, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, for I'm bitter. All these people that were her friends, her family, now are saying, blessed be the Lord, because he's given you someone that can redeem your life. He's given you someone that's a kinsman now to you, that's going to restore your life, that's going to nourish you in your old age. And blessed be Ruth, your daughter-in-law, who's born this son, because she's better to you than 7 sons. She gets to nurse it, and they finally give this child a name. And it was named Obed, which we know, we talked about the names and their meanings. Obed means worker. And boy, did work get done. Because through Obed would come Jesse, which would come David, which led to a little someone we know, named Jesus Christ. Yes, folks, in this life, we see not only the power of God as he worked through Ruth and her selflessness. But we see the power of God and how he's able to redeem a life. Yes, you can't think. When you look at chapter 3 and the takeaway, can you think of anything greater than self-sacrifice? Someone that's willing to give themselves over completely, as Ruth was. And Jesus Christ tells us the same thing in John, the 15th chapter, verses 13 and 14. The greater love hath no man than this, than a man that lay down his life for his friends. Is that only talking about someone that simply just dies? Or not only that is it, but someone that's willing to completely and purely give over their self to someone else. Give over their own life. Isn't that exactly what Ruth did? She gave over her entire life, everything she knew, to take Boaz on as a husband and to leave all the life she knew behind to please Naomi and to redeem her life because she loved her that much. And Jesus Christ says if we take that kind of life on for him, a godly life, in verse 14 of John 15, he says, "Ye are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you." You are my friends. What did Ruth mean? Friend, companion. We go on in chapter 4 and we saw the takeaways there, that the power of God to redeem a life that seemed empty, that seemed lost, that seemed hopeless. But nothing is ever lost in this life, is it? In the end, Naomi was restored with all, wasn't she? Was restored with everything she thought she had lost, the happiness she never thought she'd regain. It was all given back to her. And it'll be the same with you and I. Paul tells us about this in Romans, the 8th chapter and verse 18. That I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that will one day be revealed in us. Or simply put, that will be redeemed in us. You see, through Ruth was Naomi redeemed. Through Boaz, which means in him is strength, was Ruth redeemed in a way she never thought possible after her husband was gone. And through Boaz and Ruth, they produced a child that would go on to be a worker, and through his lineage would lead to Jesus Christ, which would redeem us all. This is the power of God to redeem a life. This was the story of Ruth. Folks, if there's anyone here tonight that's heard this and has been moved to believe it, you now have the opportunity to come forward and let God know you've heard his word, that you believe his word, that you're willing to repent of the sins you've committed in life. Confess you believe he, Jesus Christ, is the Son of God, and be baptized for the forgiveness of those sins. Or for some reason you feel like you're drifted away from God and you need to be redeemed, there are faithful men here to pray on your behalf. If you have either one of those needs, won't you come as we sing the song of invitation?